The first time he heard the knock, it was nearly midnight. Snowflakes were tumbling from the sky like whispers from the heavens, and the fire in the hearth was the only thing breathing warmth in that small, wooden cabin buried deep in the northern pines. He hadn't had visitors in over 6 years. Not since he chose solitude over sorrow. Not since he buried his past with the same hands that built the life he now led. The knock came again, quieter this time. Almost like whoever was on the other side had lost hope they'd be heard. He rose slowly, one hand gripping the edge of the table. His knees cracked with age, or maybe grief. He opened the door to find a woman, barely standing, with a child in each arm and another clinging to her coat. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. The woman tried to speak, but only managed to whisper, "Please." And just like that, the woodsman's world changed forever. His name was Thomas Hale. A man molded by trees, time, and heartbreak. He had once lived in the city, once been married, once dreamed of building a life full of laughter and tiny footsteps echoing down hallways. But a tragic car accident had stolen that dream, leaving behind only silence and pain. So, he ran, from people, from noise, from hope. He built a cabin with his own hands, surrounded by nothing but trees and the hum of solitude. The woods didn't ask questions. They simply listened. The woman who appeared that night was named Clara. She was trembling with fever, her boots soaked through, her children, Eli, 7, Hope, 5, and baby Lily, barely 1, clung to her like fragile leaves in a storm. Thomas didn't think. He simply stepped aside and let them in. That night, he laid out extra blankets, poured hot broth into trembling hands, and stoked the fire until dawn. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. The questions could wait. Survival could not. Days turned into weeks. Clara explained between coughs and cracked whispers how her husband had died 6 months earlier in a factory collapse. With no savings, no relatives, and eviction hanging over her like a guillotine, she packed up what little she had and began walking. Her only plan, go north, away from the city's shadows. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to protect her children. That the cold night she knocked on Thomas's door, she had almost given up. Thomas, who had sworn to never care again, found himself watching over Clara's children. He taught Eli how to chop wood and use a slingshot. He showed Hope how to listen to the wind and find bird nests tucked into trees. And baby Lily, who barely knew how to walk, toddled behind him like a duckling, giggling at the jingle of his worn tool belt. Clara, recovering slowly, tried to pull her weight. She cooked meals, mended worn clothes, and organized the small pantry with the precision of a woman who had lived in chaos far too long. She offered to leave once she was better, but Thomas couldn't bring himself to imagine the cabin empty again. So he said nothing. Only nodded and kept making more firewood than usual, stocking up as if for a long winter with guests. But not all storms come with snow. One morning, Eli went missing. He'd gone to check the rabbit traps near the ravine and hadn't returned. Panic rose in Clara like a tidal wave. She was sobbing, clutching Hope and Lily to her chest, her mind flashing back to every loss she had endured. But Thomas didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, slung his rifle over his shoulder, and raced into the woods with a fury he hadn't felt in years. It took hours. The snow had covered Eli's tracks. But finally, just before nightfall, he found the boy shivering near a fallen tree, his ankle swollen and useless. Thomas didn't say a word. He simply scooped the boy into his arms, wrapped his coat tighter, and trudged back through the snow, each step burning with determination. That night, as Clara cried into Thomas's shoulder, whispering thank you again and again, something shifted. The silence in the cabin was no longer empty. It was full, of warmth, of shared breath, of a family slowly mending each other. But life wasn't done testing them. A blizzard came that winter, thicker than any Thomas had ever seen. Food was scarce. Baby Lily fell sick with a high fever. Clara grew thinner by the day, refusing food so her children could eat. Thomas watched helplessly, guilt gnawing at him. He had chosen this life of solitude so he wouldn't hurt anyone again, but now these people needed him, and he had never felt so powerless. Then came a moment, one that would change everything. Clara collapsed in the kitchen while trying to prepare broth. Thomas caught her just in time. That night, as she lay barely conscious on the couch, he sat beside her and gripped her hand. "You can't give up," he whispered. "They need you. I need you." Her eyes fluttered open. For the first time, she spoke words he hadn't expected. "I didn't come here to be saved. I came because someone, told me to knock on your door. Maybe I was sent here, to save you." Spring came slowly but surely. The snow melted. The trees, once heavy with ice, stretched green limbs toward the sky. Clara recovered. The children laughed more freely. And Thomas, he smiled. Not often. But enough that Eli noticed one day and said, "You smile just like my dad used to." That evening, Clara and Thomas sat outside the cabin, watching the children chase fireflies. The sky was a canvas of stars. Clara turned to him. "We should probably think about leaving. The kids need school. A future." Thomas's heart ached at the thought, but he nodded. Then she added softly, "Unless you want us to stay." He looked at her, at the woman who had brought laughter back into his home, at the children who had reawakened a dormant love in his heart, and for the first time in a decade, he allowed himself to hope. "I want more than that," he said. "I want you to be my family." Years passed. The cabin grew. Thomas built 2 extra rooms. He taught Eli how to fish and carve wood. Hope grew wild and fearless, dancing in the fields like a wind spirit. Lily learned to bake and filled the home with smells of cinnamon and joy. And Clara became his wife. His anchor. His second chance. Visitors came sometimes, neighbors, hikers, even journalists who'd heard about the woodsman who raised a family in the forest. But Thomas didn't care about the attention. He only cared about the sound of laughter echoing through the trees and the warmth of a home once silent. And the story ends with the same words it began with. The first time he heard the knock, it was nearly midnight. But this time, when another knock came years later, it was Hope returning from college, surprising them for Christmas. And this time, when Thomas opened the door, he was smiling, because he knew he'd never be alone again.